Welcome back to another episode of the MacRumors Show. Today we have yet again another special guest. He is co-host of the Geared Up podcast, a tremendous content creator with hundreds of thousands of followers on pretty much all platforms. You've got YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest. Yes, that is right. Pinterest. Didn't even know you could have that many followers and create that much content on Pinterest, but you can. And so we're going to welcome in Mr. Andru Edwards. Andrew, how are you, man?
Dan, first of all, this is how I start Geared Up each week, is by telling people how amazing the guest is. I've never been on the other side of that. I'm feeling extremely bashful. Jeez, I appreciate that, though. Pinterest, everybody.
Yeah, you do this every time I'm on your show. You do it, and you guys are so, you and John are so like complimentary, and like the whole time I'm just thinking, man, this sounds like I can't even listen to these compliments. I don't know why. So I'm glad now you know how it. Yeah, now you know how it feels. Because yeah, exactly. I don't feel like I deserve any of that, but there it is. So yeah, well, you're welcome. So today we're going to talk about March 8th. And why is March 8th important? Well, if you haven't heard about it already, Mark Gurman has already basically leaked this info that the 8th is going to be the next Apple event. And so we're bringing in Andrew. We're going to talk about the next Apple event and what's to come. So you've heard the news, Andrew, obviously, what Mark Gurman said about the 8th. Obviously, we're going to be getting a new iPhone. Well, it's not obvious, but we're in hopes to be getting a new iPhone SE at the event. So let's start with that. What are your thoughts on the SE?
For me, I feel like this event is, if what Mark said is true, this event is like super low on my radar. I'm not personally too excited about any of this
kind
stuff.
Of a bummer, right? It's kind of
an
a bummer.
iPhone SE. I'm not gonna use that. I'm excited to see them continue making a small, inexpensive phone with the latest internals. Like, that's always impressive to me, that it's basically gonna be, an iPhone 13 in the iPhone 8 form factor. It's not gonna be the exact same camera, but it's gonna be a better camera. It's gonna have the same chip. It's gonna have 5G. Those are like the main things that make the phone fast, both from a connectivity standpoint and from a usability standpoint. So that's always good. And there's a lot of people out there that are still using this form factor. I know a lot of people still to this day, they're usually older, who they just don't want the iPhone 10 and above, swipe interface, for lack of a better term, in the Face ID interface. They like having a button. They like knowing when I press this button, I go to the home screen. No matter what's going on my phone, I can press this button and I'm just back. So that's great for them. And it's great to see them making an inexpensive phone. And I think it's interesting to see the iPhone SE is continuing while the iPhone mini is rumored to be ending. Like, the rumor is later this year, we're not going to have a mini anymore. And if that's the case, it shows that people wanted a cheap small phone, not a great small phone, if that makes sense.
It does. This is the phone for your parents. Like, my mom was using this phone. Even my brother, who's older, like he's still using this, the 2020 SE. That was his most recent purchase. Like, this is for the people who use their phone for, they use their phone, but they're not always on their phone doing a whole lot. Like, they just need something that's going to keep up and not going to cause them issues, but they also don't want to spend $800 on a phone. And they don't need a huge device, and that's what the SE is perfect for. That's why they make this. But at the same time, is this event worthy?
Kids.
And kids. Yeah, well, exactly. My nephew, my brother's kid, like they both got this phone. Like, it's like the tail end and the beginning of people who are using. But like, this isn't event worthy. They dropped the 2020 SE in a press release. Like, so I am not at all saying that Gurman's wrong, but I feel like there has to be more. There just can't be this and a refreshed iPad Air. That does not seem like event-worthy stuff to me.
I'm going to give you a prediction of mine. Now, this is not another major product, but I also predict, and no one else has said this, but it just seems obvious. We're going to get a new iPhone 13 color. Again, it's the same product, just a new color. But listen, last year, I was shocked, okay? Last year's spring event, that was in April, I forget exactly what everything was, but Apple sends me each product that they released back then. The video that did the best was talking about the purple iPhone 13. It's just a purple version of the phone that's 6 months old. All the new stuff, I think it was like AirTag and maybe the HomePod Mini, if I'm not mistaken, I forget. But the other stuff at that event did not do anywhere, and I mean nowhere near, as well as purple iPhone 13 unboxing. Let me just show you what this looks like. So, I mean, that goes to show people like that. Like, people like seeing just new stuff. So if there's something new, if there's an orange iPhone 13, I'll be all over that.
I mean, I would be too. We're both huge orange fans, so that would definitely pique my interest there. But like, again, that's cool, but that's still not like I feel like, what was the most boring Apple event? This is such a bad conversation.
That's have, a good.
Like, what was the most boring? Like seriously, what was the most boring like event that they've done virtually?
Oh, virtually.
Can we think about this? Like, Hartley, can you think of anything that was like, okay, that was underwhelming? And just like, if you do remember, what were some of the products at that? Because I still feel like no matter what you tell me, it's going to be more interesting than an iPhone SE and an iPad Air.
I don't know about virtual events, but the event that always stands out to me, or the product unveiling that was the most boring, was, I think, the iPhone XS, because there was nothing different other than the chip and the max size for the first time. That was it. And so they just spent the whole runtime talking through the same camera specs and all of the same features that they talked through the previous year. So I think that was probably the most boring one. But you're right, there's something a little bit weird about the fact that the iPhone, the second generation iPhone SE, that did actually have a fair number of new features. It was a new form factor for the SE, at least. Didn't get stage time, but the one that isn't a new form factor this year will get stage time. And there's really only, at most, 3 things they can talk about: the chip, the camera, and 5G, which they are all not going to be better than the iPhone 13. Definitely, they're not going to be able to show off camera capabilities that are better than the iPhone 13. There's even been some suggestion that this could be getting the A14 instead of the A15. So if that's the case, what are they really going to be talking about? I can't quite get my head around it. The whole marketing around this whole thing, even with the Plus name as well, which I'm sure we'll come to a little bit later on.
I think a lot of us do this, though, is we use the top of the line everything with Apple, right? So we're like, what are they going to even say about this phone that I don't care about? But remember, they're talking to likely the owners of the previous iPhone SE, or someone that has a phone that's 2 or 3 years old. And in that scenario, when you can show, here's 5G, you're future-proofing your phone. You can buy this iPhone SE and hold on to it for another 3 to 6 years, and it'll work great. The camera is going to work great, and it'll be, here's how much faster it is than the last SE. They're talking to a specific customer, and I think why it seems so boring to us is we are not that customer. It's our job to tell people what Apple said, but they're not talking to us, and so it feels...
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that.
Exciting.
I was going to say, do you think people who are going to buy the SE even care that there's an event happening in the first place then?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I hear what you're saying, but like at the same time, I don't understand why the event. That's why, if it, like Hartley said, the last version, well, the original was 2016. It still looked like the iPhone 4S, the 5. Like, it was still square, and it wasn't like. Did that even get an event either? That was just dropped by a press release, right?
Which one?
The original iPhone SE? I don't remember.
I think that was an event, yeah, because they introduced, I think, the rose gold kind of variant of the iPhone 5S for the first time, came with that. So I think it did get event time, but it was a big deal because it was the 6S in that form factor.
Right. So that gets an event because it's new. Then they don't do anything for 4 years. And then when they bring it back, it's completely different in the sense of the iPhone SE. Obviously, to us, it's an iPhone 8. But like to everyone else who just stays in their SE bubble, it's a completely different phone. Now, 2 years later, there is nothing visually different at all.
Yeah.
Like, try to sell this to your mom and dad who has one. You're not going to.
This is going to be, in my opinion, I'm assuming it's going to be like a footnote of the event. This is not going to be like a tent pole. They're not going to spend an hour on this. This is going to be a 10 to 15 minute segment. We have a new color for the iPhone 13, and right, exactly. We have a new color. Don't forget, they got to do the nice video showing the color popping all over the place. So we got the new color for the iPhone 13. We have the iPhone SE. I think they'll spend more time on the iPad Air. Just guessing here. I mean, this is really a footnote device.
And we're going to talk about the iPad Air a little bit more, but even that is not that interesting, in my opinion, to like those.
But if
who
you're
already...
having an event, you have to mention it, right?
Well, yeah, but that's why I'm just thinking. And again, we're going to talk about later on in this episode the third potential product, which would garner more interest, and that's the one that we're still not sure about. But if it does happen, then you have a little bit more of an excuse to add in these other two. But we'll stick with the iPhone SE for just a couple more minutes here. So the pricing and the design still going to look the same, going to be $399. But there's also potential rumor that the name's going to change, and it's going to be a Plus name. But it's not going to be different size. What is
right? So I'm wondering if that's the case. Does Apple keep the last gen iPhone SE in the lineup and drop the price? So does Apple have a $200 or $300 phone in their lineup now? Because otherwise, why add that? Plus is to differentiate from regular, right? Like, why would you have a Plus version of anything?
So it's kind of like an S version of an iPhone SE, basically. Like, you're not going to make it the iPhone SE S. So the iPhone SE Plus just kind of shows me that it's a slight iteration update as opposed to a big update. Hartley,
right. Well, in this case, it would be a big. I mean, it's a 2 or 3 generation upgrade, right? So it's actually a substantial upgrade over the last one. But if you're going to call it that, it implies to me that there's going to be a non-Plus iPhone SE. Because where else do they have in their lineup something that's called Plus where there isn't a non-Plus version? It just doesn't make sense.
I think that would make sense, but the only thing that I think would be a bit of an issue with that is the market that the iPhone SE is targeted at. I don't think is going to discriminate between a 4G and a 5G phone. There's enough, iPhone 12 users that are not really convinced about their 5G experience anyway, and we're not buying the iPhone 12 because it was the first iPhone to have 5G. So I don't know if that's going to happen at the lower end. I mean, maybe it will just be a way that they can signal this very minor update to consumers. I actually think that they may not even term it Plus in the sense of writing out the word Plus like they used to. Because they're not meaning it in terms of a size increase. I think they may literally use like a plus character, and it would literally just be
plus symbol,
the same iPhone SE. And I even wonder if it will have exactly the same camera, and possibly, maybe the rumors are wrong, and it just has the same chip, and it is literally just the same iPhone SE plus 5G. But I don't know. I think that would kind of make a little bit more sense in terms of what we're hearing, but even less to talk about the event in that case.
Here's what I like. I like seeing products get updated, okay? I don't know. What else could they do with the SE? Because remember, this is a device for people that really want to hang on to that home button, right? So they're not going to take it to full screen device like a mini, like an iPhone 13 mini. So if they're keeping this form factor, which is probably their most popular form factor they've ever made, right? The 6 through 8 devices. What else could they do? Like, they're just keeping it updated instead of letting it get old, which I prefer that versus just letting it languish. So I don't think there's going to be a big deal at the event. They're not going to focus too hard on it. Yeah, and just let us know. Here's something new. That's it. We'll be okay. It's not a phone for us.
Well, I think we've probably been talking about it for longer than they're going to talk about it at the actual event.
Exactly. I agree.
It's just for somebody who has to sit there and watch the event
and then make a video
job.
Immediately.
Yeah, I'm already bored and we haven't even gotten it. It's just like, anyways, there is another iPhone SE, but probably not going to come at this event, and that's the larger iPhone SE, which in my mind should be called the Plus because it looks like an iPhone 8 Plus or 7 Plus or whatever that form factor is. Hartley, I need more of a refresh on that because that's farther outside my rumor mill timeline that I like to focus on.
Well, it now looks like we're going to be getting another iPhone SE, probably in 2024. There's a chance it could come next year. But the thing that's a bit unusual about this is we've been having rumors about 2 successive generations of iPhone SEs simultaneously, which perhaps indicates that this upgrade is really small because it's the next one that's going to be the big deal. And that's the one that you can imagine taking the event time, because the rumors around this device are a bit more interesting. It sounds like it's going to be pretty much the design of the iPhone XR, but perhaps with a Touch ID button on the side. So it would be a form factor change and a little bit more to talk about. So it's again using an older design, but refreshing it with some new internals. And you can kind of see how that would work in the lineup in years to come. But we've heard so much about this device already. That's what's a little bit strange.
I don't think the name, the SE Plus for this year's makes any sense then. Because if they're going to do that, then what are they going to call that larger one?
It does. Right.
You got to call
But it's
that
not
one
an
the
SE.
Plus and make this the SE 5G.
But it can't be the Plus because Plus is like, it's the same device, just larger. And this is going to, if it's a 10R, that is the iPhone 10 and above form factor, full screen form factor.
I genuinely think we could make a show based around conspiracies, thoughts, and ideas of how Apple names things, because it's so interesting. It's mind-blowing that $1 trillion company does this with their names, and why people are confused is beyond. Well, didn't we have an argument, Andrew, me and you, about some sort of naming thing? Wasn't it the SE?
I don't remember what it was, but I remember we had a long text thread, group chat, arguing about what things should be called.
I would just say the one thing to remember going into this event and thinking about this confusing naming is that they haven't done a Plus iPhone since the iPhone 7 Plus, and they shelved that Plus name when they moved to Max as the term for the biggest and best iPhone you could get. So don't necessarily think that they're not going to use the Plus to mean something completely different now that they didn't use it 4 years ago. Look at how they changed what MagSafe meant on the back of an iPhone. That's completely different to the MagSafe for a Mac. So they do seem to like to recycle their names. So it could mean something different going forward. But it's so hard to be excited about this device.
It really is. Like, I'm
Why'd
not
we
trying to
start
be
with this one?
negative.
Why'd you start the show with this device of all things?
I don't know. I think it's genuinely going to be the first thing they talk about, right?
Cut this part of the show, move it to the second, so people don't just start tuning out about a device they don't care about.
Please don't tune out. We're gonna get to something. We're gonna get to something only slightly more interesting, which is the iPad Air. And guess what, guys? It's gonna look exactly the same as the last one. So there's that. I mean, I don't know how else to start it. It's an iPad Air that's gonna keep on keeping on with that redesign. This time it's gonna have 5G because the iPad Mini got 5G, so it only makes sense to give this one 5G. And it should have an A15 chip, right? But isn't there some reports about that kind of being clocked down a little bit?
Well, that's the thing is in the iPad Mini, even though it's got even though it's got the A15, it's got a downclocked version of the A15, so it's nowhere near as powerful as the iPhone 13 or in the iPhone 13 Pro. And if this is, it's a bit strange really, because the last iPad Mini copied the previous iPad Air, and now the iPad Air is going to copy the iPad Mini. So if you look at it in those terms, and we're going to be bringing over those iPad Mini features like center stage, like the improved ultra wide camera, then maybe it's also going to be downclocked as well. That would make sense.
So then they're downclocking it because they don't. I mean, this would essentially make you get a better display, but then what's the point of buying the 11-inch iPad Pro? You know, because then you could for a lot less get an iPad Air. It's almost as big. The screen is not as great, but everything else would be just as good. So they have to clock that performance a little bit, which is kind of, yeah. Well, I'm not going to get into that. So you brought up the center stage feature. That's, I guess, an interesting. Do you use center stage a lot, guys?
I like it.
I personally don't. I mean, a lot. I would say no, because usually when I'm doing a video call, I'm doing it on my Mac, so I have like a Mac Pro, and I have the like the Logitech webcam. So this is where I usually do my video chats. And then if I'm not doing it here, it's because I'm on the go, so I'll just do it on my iPhone. So, I mean, I love the feature and I have used it. It's just my iPad is kind of last place for video chats for me.
I'm the opposite of that. I always use my iPad for video calls, so I've really enjoyed using it. I think it's really handy when someone else comes into frame. I think it's a great feature. I definitely would want it in any future iPad I would buy.
Yeah, I think I've used it for. I don't use like you said, Andrew. I use the same setup that you have. So, but I have found, like, before I had this whole setup and we started our own podcast, when I would join yours quite a bit, I needed something to be off. I wanted to use so I use my iPad a lot, and it, like, having it follow you around is a good feature to have, especially when you're kind of ducking in and out. But we also just really didn't record video a lot. So, like, I get it. There's going to be a lot of people out there who are still at working from home and using, Zoom and whatever their platforms they're using, and they need stuff like this. So it makes sense. If you're going to put it in the mini, you got to continue to refresh. What is with the quad LED True Tone flash? Like, why is that going to be a marketing?
Well, as we're learning, there's not much else to talk about, so that's going to be 15 minutes of event time just on the rear flash. Well, it's the only iPad left other than the entry-level iPad that doesn't have one. So, it's all just minor, just bringing everything up to date, everything, similar specs across the lineup. Yeah.
Because iPad Air right now is, when you look at the whole rest of the lineup, it's so behind. So
the iPad Mini really showed that. I mean, they even gave center stage and the new ultra-wide camera to the entry-level iPad. So the iPad Air is really overdue. Right. I'm surprised this update didn't come out last year.
And I always wonder why. Like, why is that? Like, what's making them wait? Like, it's the same form factor. They're just changing a chip, and they're just changing out camera parts. Like, what took so long? Is it like a year overdue?
Might be supply chain constraints as well, because they were struggling to get, they were having to prioritize some products over others to try and meet the demand for these products. So that might be the reason, but it just makes it really boring for the event.
All right, so hopefully this is the last product. Well, hopefully it's not the last product of the event, but hopefully this is the one that we know for sure that's coming. We're pretty sold on a Mac coming, and since the iMac Pro got pushed off later on,
that's what's upsetting me though.
Yes, I want.
That's
the new
what's
iMac
upsetting me though.
Yeah,
because this is one of the rumors that I like. You never hear the rumors and you're like, I literally hope that one is not true. I hope that one is not true.
All the time.
We already have an M1 Mac Mini. We already have it.
Not like this though. Not like this.
What I'm saying is there is a Mac Mini on Apple Silicon if you want one, but there is not an well, I guess there is an iMac.
There is an iMac. I'm looking right at it, but there's not an iMac. There's not an iMac that's for people like us, like video editor. Yes.
But there isn't. There is not
a
for people like you
pro
either.
Level. Exactly, and there are a lot of people who love the Mac Mini, and I'm one of them, though I am not a user of the Mac Mini. I do love what it like represents, which is like a really solid entry-level machine that could do much more than an entry-level machine, if that makes any sense. And so this new version is meant to replace the current Intel powerhouse that you can kind of stack up to and make, super powerful for people who are running servers off of it or editing or doing anything like that, who needs that, graphic or power intensive work. So the new M1 Pro or Max Mac Mini could be coming at this event, and it's going to have a redesign. So yay, something new to look at, right? What are we expecting there?
So what we're expecting with the Mac Mini is this total redesign that's going to be moving away from the unibody design for the first time in 12 years. So they've stuck with that same exact Mac Mini design since 2010. And now what it's going to be, it's going to almost be a little bit like the iPhone 12 or the iPhone 13 with a flat band around the outside and sort of plexiglass top. I don't know if that's perhaps better for thermals. I don't quite know the reasoning behind that. But that's the main sort of design change. It perhaps will also be a little bit sort of flatter, a little bit smaller. And also, because there's going to be a different material on the top to the sides, there's a chance that it could get a sort of two-tone look, a little bit like the 24-inch iMacs, the way they get two different colors on the stand, on the chin, and on the back of the device. So it definitely should look pretty substantially different in terms of design.
Where is this design rumor coming from? Is it just from John Prosser, or did anyone else say this?
I believe it's pretty much just from John.
Okay. I'm just going to say, John's a friend of mine. No big deal. But remember, his last major redesign leak was that the Apple Watch was going to look like this as well. So if I had to guess, like the design sounds like all of Apple's entry-level stuff. We get colorful iPhone 13, but not 13 Pro. We get colorful iMacs, but when the iMac Pro comes, I'm sure it's not going to be in multiple colors. It sounds weird that this Pro version of the Mac Mini would take on this colorful look, while the entry-level M1 is the unibody look. So if I this is my prediction here. I have no inside info. I'm saying no. That's not what's happening here.
Just to the redesign. You're saying
just
yes
to
to everything
else.
else.
That redesign of multiple colors. Because also there's the rumor that
I don't know if he said multiple colors.
MacBook
He
Air
just
will
said
be
two
multiple
tones.
colors.
Just two tones.
Oh, just two.
And
okay.
that could be,
just two tones. Okay.
That could be gray and darker gray for the pro users that need that sort of monochrome look.
So we took the colors thing when we heard two-tone. We thought 24. Not we, but like we the people were like, hey, it's going to be two-tone. It's going to have, which by the way, if it does end up doing that, you are right, Andrew. That's weird because we have already established that Apple doesn't give pro users anything fun. You are a black and white person. You're all about
Sierra
business.
Blue. We got Sierra Blue. It's nice.
But you don't get that in a computer.
No, you do
don't
not.
get that in a Mac. You get gray or silver. You are businessman. Businessman does not want to be show-offy. He doesn't show up with a Razer laptop. I love Razer laptops. I'm not downing them, but like you don't show up with a Chroma keyboard. It's not happening. You're not getting that. So you might be onto something. I don't think you're going to get a two-toned orange iMac, which, by the way, if they do that, it better not be the iMac way because the pastel versions have to go. I'm sorry. I don't like it. I'm looking at one right now.
Why is the best color facing the wall?
Exactly. I returned the orange iMac. We've already established that Andrew and I are huge orange fans.
Wait a minute. Dan, you as a professional, though, what did you settle on as your color for the iMac? If this man says silver, okay, blue, okay, all right, acceptable. Question regarding the M1 Max, though. Okay, so if this comes out and we get M1 Pro and M1 Max options for the Mac Mini, are we expecting this to offer multiple chips, basically to potentially be, at the high end at least, more powerful than the MacBook Pro?
I think that's quite likely, considering that when you look back at the M1 Max from 2020, the Mac Mini is the most powerful one, more powerful than the MacBook Pro because they've got that much higher sort of thermal ceiling. And if they do use this sort of plexiglass design to keep the thermals a little bit better inside that design, because the current sort of unibody design, it keeps all that heat packed in that sort of metal box. So maybe they can push the M1 Pro and the M1 Max even further. That would make sense to me to offer something that's a little bit different. It's got to be different to the MacBook Pro. It's got to offer a significantly different experience. That's why we're going to get more ports with it as well. So that would currently you can get 3 Thunderbolt ports on the MacBook Pro. You'll get 1 more with the Mac Mini. So the rumors say.
Based on how great the MacBook Pros have been, the M1 Pro, the M1 Max versions of the MacBook Pro.
Fantastic.
If this Mini is more powerful, do the pros switch over to this? If you're using an iMac Pro or the latest iMac non-Pro or even a Mac Pro, do you switch over to an M1 Max Mac Mini?
I don't know that I would switch. Like me personally, no. But I think those who use a desktop regularly, like I guess I don't know, because I was a Mac Pro user. I use it at home now whenever I'm working from home, but like I went full switch to the MacBook Pro because it's significantly better than my Mac Pro, like in terms of performance. Like I'm
for
saving
what you do.
For what I do. I'm saving minutes, like many minutes in in exporting videos. Like I can export a 10-minute video in less than half the time, and on my MacBook Pro or on my Mac Pro with the Intel chips, it would be close to real time, which is still, you know, God, tell me that a couple years ago, that's still pretty good, but like it's not anywhere near what you're getting with this, which is just mind-blowing. So yeah, if you are a person who likes stationary setups, if you're trying to get in without having to pay the luxury tax of having an extra, you know, having the monitor and having the display, because that's what you're basically getting is bring your own display. You probably got one that's good enough. So yeah, I would say, and there are lots of people who use M1 Mac Minis now for that because it's more than enough. Imagine if they get their hands on one that's even better.
That's my dilemma currently because, I mean, as you know, so I'm using the Mac Pro.
But you got the good Mac Pro. You've got the, tell everybody what you've got in your Mac Pro.
What do you mean?
You've got the,
okay, no, listen.
Didn't
listen.
you go?
Okay, first of all, my Mac Pro, this was all sponsored content, okay? But the Mac Pro has 768 gigabytes of RAM in it.
Same
and
here.
It's I think it's the 16
Thank you,
core.
OWC.
Right, yeah, thank you. Shout out to OWC, right?
Yes.
But, and there's the 2 video cards in there. And I feel like these video cards, if I'm not mistaken, were like $4,000 each or something like that. Like,
You have the Afterburner cards too, right?
and the Afterburner, the cards themselves, I could probably buy 2 maxed out M1 Max MacBook Pros for the same amount of money of just the cards that are inside this Mac Pro. And I feel like when I use the MacBook Pro, my workflow is way smoother. Like, how is it that it has all this RAM? I have like 32 terabytes of storage. Like, this is crazy that a laptop is destroying the MacBook, the Mac Pro.
It's absolutely wild, and it's 100%, you know, the M1 chip and what it's capable of doing. But have you done a test on like just an export test or some kind of like everyday task that you do between both machines to see what the difference is?
Yeah, I mean, but back when the MacBook Pro came out, and it's usually equal or faster on the MacBook Pro, which is
wild.
What is
like
happening right now?
For me, I want to preface, if you're listening to this and you're like, I've got a pretty maxed out Mac Pro and it's just fine and it beats that. I had a entry level Mac Pro because we were just getting that to make content. We weren't trying to, you know, and even at the time, whatever that entry level was way better than what I was using. So that became my main machine. And then through the likes of companies wanting to send out their products like OWC and their RAM, you know, it did get significantly better. However, my graphics cards, we didn't update. Those were entry level. That entry level graphics card now, compared to what you're getting via the M1 Pro and M1 Max, it's not even close. So for when you're doing something with graphics related like content like what Andrew and I are doing on a daily basis, there's a reason why it's so much better. And it just continues. Even the M1 Max were getting close to being as good as my Mac Pro. Now, when it comes to juggling other, you know, tasks and processes, like it just wasn't as good. But the M1 Max is a great computer for the MacBook Pro. So I would highly recommend, if you're listening to this and you're like on the fence on what you want to get, if this Mac Mini turns out to be true, this is definitely going to be one that I could probably recommend to people with no problems at all.
It's just so insane to have your huge Mac Pro, because we obviously, if you have a Mac Pro, you need to have an external monitor and everything else. To just remove that from the setup and just slide in this tiny redesigned plexiglass original Apple TV looking box, and it's faster. Like, I don't even know what to say.
So, Hartley, can you refresh my memory on what you think the Mac Mini lineup's going to look like going forward then? Like, what is the setup going to be? We're still going to have the M1 Mac, right?
And also pricing. What's pricing going to look like here?
That too. That's, yes.
Well, I think it's pretty much going to be, I would have thought, we don't know about pricing, but it would definitely make sense for these to be more expensive than the M1 Mac Mini, which is going to stay in the lineup, because this is not a replacement for those M1 Mac Minis. This is the high-end Intel models, because there's still Intel Mac Minis. There's still that space gray model from 2018 is still available. And it's that model that's going to be replaced. So you'll have two Mac Minis, both with Apple Silicon, and you're starting to see how the Mac lineup's going to look going forwards, where you're going to have entry level and Pro with different kinds of Apple Silicon, pretty much in every category. And we're going to see that later on in the year with the iMac. So I think that the thing is with this Mac Mini, to go back a little bit with what you were saying before about where does this stand with the Mac Pro, this is going to be almost like the Mac Pro. It's going to be a Mac Mini Pro effectively in the lineup, and it's going to steal away a lot of those Mac Pro users. And I don't think that's too strange when you think that the old Mac Pro, like the trash can Mac Pro, that was priced a lot lower. It was a lot less powerful, and it's those sorts of users that this is really going to appeal to, because there is no sort of Mac in that mid to sort of upper range that's for that kind of audience. So that's kind of how I see it panning out.
So that's pretty much going to be the entire show that we think is going to happen here. The SE, the iPad Air, and then a Mac, which presumably is going to be the Mac Mini. But there might be some wild card
new
announcements.
iPhone color, maybe?
New iPhone. Okay. Andrew's, I like his prediction of a new iPhone color. Hopefully it's orange, fingers crossed.
New Apple Watch band colors?
Yeah, that's all press release.
New case colors?
Oh, yeah, because it is the spring. We have their spring refresh, right? Okay. But what other wild card announcements do you guys think? Hartley, what do you think?
I think that it would make sense to see the new iPad Pro, because the other last year's iPad Pro came out around this time in the spring. So it's a year old, kind of would make sense. I don't know if we've really heard when that's coming, so that wouldn't surprise me. Kind of goes well with the iPad Air to show the mid-range and the high-end. iMac Pro doesn't look very likely, since that looks like that's going to take the place of the Mac Mini at this event. So I'm not sure. I think the problem with the iPad Pro is that we don't know what chip it's got. And if it's got the M2, it's not going to be the first one. The first device to show off the M2 is not going to be a device that can't really take advantage of it. So I'm not too sure, but there's got to be something. There's got to be something else that's got to really impress people for this event.
No, hopefully there is a wild card thing, whether it's a piece of hardware or software, something cool that maybe they add something to Apple One. So if you're already an Apple One subscriber, here's a new thing that we're adding in that you get access to. Like ebooks, the rumor of ebooks, that sounds like a cool one. Like, just give me something, because right now, although the Mac Mini does sound cool, but as of right now, it's like, I don't know if I would integrate any of these things into my daily life, and that just feels a little bit disappointing.
How about external displays? Because if it's a Mac Mini,
right? No. I mean, if you're doing a Mac Mini, that's a perfect opportunity.
That's true, but I can't imagine, with all the rumors being surrounded. Like, usually when we get real close to these dates, like, we have a pretty foregone conclusion. Although there's been some surprises lately, but most of the time, especially in these times, we're pretty up on the schedule, and just because external displays hasn't really been something that's been talked about, but that would be awesome, and that would be something that I would like, because even though I love the Pro Display XDR, let's be real, if we didn't have a need for it for work, I'm not buying that for my house. I'm not buying a $6,000, but if you got something like $1,500-ish, I would be interested in a monitor that's close in quality and $1,500. That would be great. But I don't know. Hartley, do you think that's possible?
Well, I think it's a matter of time before we see these displays. We know that they're definitely working on something. They've got to be for these new Mac Mini and Mac Pro that we're going to see, because the LG displays that have kind of been a workaround for a few years, they've been discontinuing those on and off. They're a bulky design. They're not a proper first party solution. So we know they've got to come. This is the perfect time for us to see them. And if they were to show off, say, 3 new displays in 3 sizes with a sort of entry level around, say, the size of the 24-inch iMac with an LCD panel, then maybe a 27 with ProMotion and Mini LED, and then at the top end you have your new Pro Display XDR. That would be something that could really perhaps steal the show, and Apple knows how to create a bit of excitement around that, and they know that people want these displays. They know that would be the thing that people would come away from this event remembering. And you could even show universal control, moving from one display to the other. So I think it would be nice.
Yeah, that's true. That would be cool. Now I'm excited for that. Yeah, now it better come, or I'm gonna
Now
be
you're
really
excited for it,
disappointed.
and you're gonna
Harley.
be disappointed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Before we go, I want to ask Andrew one more question. Of all the leaks and rumors that you've heard so far over the last, however many months, what product are you 100% looking forward to seeing in 2022?
I mean, no, but I mean, I have to go with. I mean, the most exciting thing that Apple's been doing, at least in my opinion, for the past couple of years, is the transition from Intel to Apple Silicon, and seeing all the stuff they've been able to accomplish with that, which a lot of us thought was untrue, mind-blowing, once we actually got our hands on it. And so I just can't wait to see what they're actually going to do with the Mac Pro. Like, what are you going to do? Like, if you have entry-level machines that are competitive with a Mac Pro, and you have high-end machines that are doing better than a Mac Pro at a fraction of the cost, what, pray tell, do you plan to do? Like, what is this? I'm so curious what they're going to do and what kind of power they're going to harness.
I can't personally fathom what would even, like, how you even make it better than what it is now. So, like, the thought of, like, oh, there's going to be, like, well, there's not going to be a lot of modularity to it. There just can't be. But, I mean, there's still going to be, there has to be some sort of appeal. Otherwise, no one's going to spend that much on it. So just what it is, I don't know. But I'm pretty excited about that for sure.
And then the other thing, like, I'm super excited. Like, that's a product I can wrap my head around because we use computers. The headset, the VR headset, what is Apple's take going to be on VR? How's it going to be different from what Meta's doing with what the hell? Oculus, Meta Rift, Meta what
Quest?
the hell is it called?
Oculus Quest.
Meta Quest. The
Yeah.
Meta Quest
Meta
2.
Quest.
What's Apple's take on this? I'm so curious because they've been testing like AR stuff and all their other devices for like 3 years now? Like what have they been learning, and what are they going to do with a headset? If this is the year where they actually show it, and we saw like that Reality OS leak yesterday, I think it feels like it's soon. If that's a 2020 product, then that's definitely going to be at the top of my list.
So we've been getting, Hartley, correct me, right? We've been hearing that there's a good chance they're going to at least talk about it at WWDC, and then come later on, we'll get the headset.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it looks like we're not going to get the headset this year. Because they've been having a lot of problems with this headset. Because it's got the basically an equivalent of the M1 Pro in it. Apparently it's been overheating, and the main thing is that they wanted to show this off in front of people, in front of an in-person audience, and they're not going to be able to do that at the moment. They're not willing to take that step just yet. So between those development issues and the fact that they really want this to be a show-stopping unveiling, it's probably not going to be this year.
Can you imagine going to an event where you are waiting in line to put a headset on that 15 people ahead of you just used? How do you even do that anymore?
You don't. You don't. They need
right.
They honestly would have to be like, my guess is they'll show it off in front of people, right? Like they want that wow reaction. I get that. My guess is though, if you're going to get hands-on with it and they're going to show you that, then it's like 5 people. They have 5 prototypes, 5 people. So yeah, so we're probably not going to get it this year, but yeah, that's a bummer. And that kind of keeps up with the theme of this event in my mind. Just kind of going to be a bummer, you know? Right. So
hopefully there's just something.
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But all right, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Please tell us where everyone else can find more of you. If you want to hear more about this riveting March 8th event, I think I'm going to be joining you up on your Geared Up podcast with John to chat more about this next week. So by the time you're listening to this, it's probably already out, but who knows? But where else can we find you?
But no, like you said, I'm on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, basically any social that you can think of, Twitter. And my name is Andru Edwards. Really easy to find me because my first name is spelled Andru. So if you just look that up, there I am.
He gives us fantastic coverage. He gets all the Apple devices, all the Samsung, the new S22 Ultra. How's that been treating you? I know you've got one in hand somewhere around there, right?
I have actually. They came in yesterday. I haven't even opened it yet.
Yeah.
But
So if you want all the latest news on, all the gadgets and anything tech related, he's going to have you covered. So again, man, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
well, thanks for having me here. This was great.